We've made it to the Lost Valley at last. Hello and welcome to the Battle and Barrow and another D&D Mystara campaign waffle session. This is where I am going to waffle on about our last game in our ongoing D&D campaign, set in Mystara. We have been playing this adventure since April. This is Night's Dark Terror, and we finally made it to the Lost Valley of Hutaaka. We are on the eastern side of it. We are still missing our new player, but let us crack on and see what happens in this session. We have finally made it to Hutaaka, and we are on the eastern side, and this side is deathly quiet. There's no animals, no birds, just the sound of the wind howling through the valley, and of course traffic outside my window. Sorry about this, it's summer. My audio quality goes a bit wonky during the summer. I'll continue. And for a while it's a bit unnerving. They are sort of, there's hills and cliffs and rocky outcrops either side of them, and occasionally they do hear the sound of loose rocks, as if someone moving around up there somewhere and letting rocks go, but when they investigate there's nothing there. They are travelling in a sort of northerly direction, northwest, and they pass more to the west a shrine, which they decide to have a look at. They quickly spot that in the sort of ruined roof ceiling of the shrine there are 3 sturges. These are quickly dealt with, and they have a look round and find nothing but a pair of old rusty manacles, the sort of type that you'd hold prisoners in, or maybe nastily sort of slaves in, or that kind of thing, but nothing else of interest. They continue on their way and quickly come to a village, a ruined village. The buildings are old, deserted, and there is just no one there. There is nothing there at all. They discover a well nearby, test water, and it's good, and they fill their water skins up, because this is going to be a long, barren journey. They decide they got enough food, but water could be a problem, so whilst they're here, they've tested it, it's fine, and it is fine. From here, they can either go north or west, and they decide to take the road west, heading west, and after a couple of miles they come across a narrowing, so it's in a sort of ravine part, and either side of this ravine there are arches that they have to pass through, passing right into the ravine. As they do so though, a boulder somehow shakes loose from up high and rolls down. They make some dex checks and most of them pass it, except for their newly acquired war dog. I sort of laughed then, I shouldn't have done. It was quite sad. He got squished and died, so they lost their war dog, so that was a rather upsetting start to this session, really. They sort of scout around here, this area, trying to think out, see if someone has done that deliberately, if it's a trap, and it's there. Ranger sort of climbs up high a bit to get a better view, and it's there in the distance, about a mile off. He sees someone, sort of, there's a river amongst just near a forest, and he catches what he thinks is a glimpse of someone, but doesn't see anything necessarily. No, nothing too definite. It could be, it's just out the corner of his eye. It could have been something, it could have been nothing. So they make their way to there, because it is on their direction they're heading, and when they get there he does notice some footprints, some sort of human-esque but clawed footprints. This is of course a Hutaakan they've seen, just keeping an eye on this side of the valley, and it will return to its village. They after a while they get about halfway through the eastern part of the valley, and it's nightfall, so they set watch and camp, but the night is quite a restless one. Throughout the night they can hear the moans of the dead, and looking out they can even catch glimpses of them in the distance. They don't come near the camp, but they can just catch glimpses off in the distance, just never getting very near. The next morning they're a bit tired, and it's not quite sunlight yet, and they're waking up, and it's here they hear this piercing scream in the dark, echoing throughout the valley. It must come from some distance off, but something has happened, and now the players are really sort of getting a bit paranoid, a bit on edge, but they carry on. The next day is quite uneventful. It's just a slow slog with, again, rocks dropping loose and what have you. As they get near the western part of it, they hear a sort of singing, I guess is the only way I can describe it, sort of throat warbling singing. This is in fact a Treldar, who they'll meet soon, vocal. These are a special new character, sort of almost leaders of the tribe, and that's what they're hearing their morning ritual. Soon, during the afternoon, they pass into the western part of the valley, and as they do so, they come across 3 dead bodies by a house, really, a building. They examine the bodies and they notice that one, they are human, but they're like a primitive human. They're squat, short, and bald. These are Treldar, that have been lost within this valley, the distant ancestors of the Treldar back in Keramikos, that haven't progressed. They've been sort of trapped almost in time by the Hutaakans. What has happened now for people at home is there has been, just recently, has been a civil war between the Treldar and the Hutaakans, who the Treldar thought they were being subject to slavery and so rebelled, and the Hutaakans thought they were being, there was a coup, and they thought they were just looking after the Treldar. The Treldar saw them as being nasty. In this situation, there is neither right nor wrong. Both are right, both are wrong. It's what we DMs like to call the grey zone, and this is what our players are going to have to deal with. Do they pick a side? Do they not pick a side? They're getting involved in something that, isn't necessarily good versus evil, so this would be quite interesting. As they're examining the bodies, a group of 8 warriors and a vocal of Treldar come round the corner and instantly accuse these newcomers of murdering their companions. We have a little role-playing session here where the players play out, sort of saying, no, we didn't, it's not us. They've already sort of had time to examine the bodies quickly. They can sort of say, well, one, that spear's not a weapon of ours. Our weapons have no blood on them. We don't have blood on us. And a couple of the bodies are actually slashed with claw marks rather than weapons, and we don't have anything of the sort. They are quite friendly to the Treldar, and so that helps. And it helps alleviate the situation, and they believe them. They examine the bodies themselves and decide that it must be the mutts that did this, as they call them. The mutts are, of course, the Hutaakans, which have jackal heads. Unfortunately, in this video, you'll see when I use Hutaakans, I don't have any jackal-headed models, so I just reuse some gnolls, which I figured would be close enough. They convince the newcomers, our party, to come back to the village with them. The vocal introduces himself as Guri Ben Karl, and wishes to gain the support of the adventurers to help them out in this civil war, who explains the background, what's happened. Of course, it is a one-sided story, making out the Hutaakans are evil slave lords when they're not necessarily that, really, and asked the players to help them. The players sort of tentatively agree, but they wish to know more about the Hutaakans. They'll get the chance soon, as at night a scouting party of Treldar come in and say that they've just discovered that tomorrow at midnight there will be a ceremony done by the Hutaakans. Now, what this ceremony is the temple nearby, which nearby the village we are in, the Temple of Fla, has a deep evil secret. It's the undead are restless within it, and the Hutaakans used to perform ceremonies keeping the undead at bay. And worse than that, there is an evil monster we mentioned a few episodes back called the Katobra, this big Lovecraftian tentacled monstrosity. So at night at the moment, the undead are allowed to roam free. The Traldar know this, but they have sort of a different idea of what was going on to what the Hutaakans were. They believe they have their own solution to this, which they'll tell the players, but for now it's getting nightfall and they must remain in the buildings. And yes, the undead pour out of the temple and roam the streets. The next day happens and not a lot goes on. There's just sort of more questions, more background to this. And the party make their way to the shrine where this ceremony is meant to take place, taking a small party of Traldar with them. They wait out there at midnight for the Hutaakans, who appear, and they are not as armoured as what the miniatures will suggest here. They are in robes, they have sort of ceremonial spears, and they perform a ceremony. It seemingly goes on for hours. The players decide to interrupt this ceremony and get Steve to go over there, as he has the highest charisma out of our party, to get Stephen to go over there, have a talk to him, ask him what's going on, what is happening. This is what the Traldar wanted him to do. They wanted to disrupt the ceremony and maybe even observe it and disrupt it if possible. So that's what they do. The ceremony is interrupted. There's a small minor role-playing session about this, where Stephen's getting them, and the Hutaakans are sort of calling him a fool, even though he's being polite, so he has that for him, so they're not necessarily hostile, but they've interrupted the ceremony, which will hopefully placate the dead, but because they've interrupted it, there will be consequences. Stephen sees this as a threat, but it's not. What is happening is they are surrounded by a horde of undead, skeletons and zombies. The Traldar do a bolt at this point. They're not very they don't have much courage. They're quite cowardly, leaving the Hutaakans and our party left to deal with it. There are loads of undead, loads of skeletons, loads of zombies. The Hutaakans aren't very combat. They don't have anything in the way of weapons. They're priests, but they do say to the players, don't worry about getting hit. They'll heal them if damage is done, and if any undead break through, they can turn them. So there is now the players back off, because this is an epic fight to them. This is too many monsters. What they don't know is one rule I like from 4th edition is the minion rule. So these have relatively low hit points, almost one hit death is it, but they don't know that. So, and it's quite a tense thing. They do get wounded quite a bit at times, and the Hutaakans do in fact live up to their word and heal them almost as soon as they are wounded, which gives the players some sort of trust to the Hutaakans, which is what I wanted to achieve here. There was this one awesome bit where we got a critical roll rolled on the fumble table, and I think it was something like quadruple damage or something weird like that, because it happened twice in the game. It will happen again later on, and this skeleton literally got smashed to pieces by, I think it was Stephen who did this, and it was great. With the skeletons dealt with, the players hang back and wait for the zombies. They have a really slow move and they're quite far away, and they've got time. So they get cocky and just say, oh, remember that brandy we found a few adventures back? We're going to actually stop and have a drink of brandy. And I sort of point out, well, why are you doing that? You might as well have range at them, at least narrow them down. There are quite a lot if they do get hold of you. So they do that. So while Witchy Poo is having a brandy, she's got the brandy in her hand, she casts her fireball cantrip at the zombies. She has to make a range attack, and guess what? She rolls a 1. So I don't even roll on the fumble table for this. I just deem she hits the brandy and everyone around her takes 10 points of damage.
Oh.
Everyone takes 10. Okay.
Everyone takes 10 points of damage because you set the brandy on fire during combat.
Yes, with this, you hear the High Priestess sort of mumble to herself, "Are we sure these people are going to be capable of helping us?" The remaining zombies, as they get near, are turned by the priestesses and they begin to flee the scene. Now, almost to prove the point to the "are they worth it?", Ranger waits until the longest possible moment to pump an arrow into the zombie as it flees, almost without looking, just to prove his point. And it was a brilliant shot in game. Fantastic. Once this is dealt with, the Hutaakans explained the situation, which was that they did ceremonies in the temple, sort of rites that would keep the horrors at bay. The Traldar uprose and despoiled the last of the Hutaaka's finery during the process. Unfortunately, the Traldar didn't know that they were performing these rites in there to restrain the denizens of the temple. And now, at night, the valley is one of horror. Luckily, everyone here, I should point out, speaks a very basic form of the common language, being Traldar are descendants of the Traldar. So, the players decide at this point to side with the Hutaakans, as they seem to have the more knowledge about the situation, what's going on. The Hutaakans feel rightly that there is a tome called the Knowledge of Elders, which is an ancient book that can drive back the creatures for good. They know that this book is sealed beneath a shrine known as the Vault of the Elders. They have a rod that was meant to open the door to this shrine, but they cannot read it, as it is a sort of arcane rod, and they are priests, they are clerics, they cannot read it. So they've been looking for a wizard, hopefully, to come into the valley. Just so happens we've got one in the party. She takes a look at the rod and instantly sees that effectively this is a combination of a knock spell and a continual light that can be used once. With this, they agree to take the rod and some priests and go to the Vault of the Elders. So they go there, and the vault is indeed locked. She uses the rod, and the door opens. As the vault opens, there's a sort of a massive stone breaks and it opens. It reveals a chamber that is sort of 5 foot wide and 30 foot long. But this sort of event and the door just smashing open is enough to startle the Hutaakan priests, who flee, leaving the party alone. They descend the stairs and enter a 20-foot square chamber. The far end there is shelves and bookcases full of books, which they assume is where the tome they are looking for is next to it. But they are attacked by a wraith. The original adventure has a special ghoul they call it, but I changed it to a wraith because it would be more challenging for the players, and challenging it was. The wraith has a maximum hit point drain to the players, where if it gets down to 0, they die. And so that happens to all the players. All the players and Stephen get affected by this. They get walloped by it, in fact. They end up, so I think Ranger ends up with 16 maximum hit points. Witchy Poo had 11. And poor Stephen takes a hit against a wraith, and it is a critical. I roll on the crit table, and it is quadruple max damage. This just takes him out and takes him down. And with this, the party are in full panic mode. They quickly leave the lair and go back out into the open, hoping it's undead and maybe that will have an effect. It sort of does. Wraiths have disadvantage in sunlight, and it is sunlight outside, but it still comes out and attacks them. This is probably the hardest combat that they fought in this entire game. So I think I'll probably use a few more wraiths in the future. They do eventually defeat it, even though they are on death's door. They do manage to revive Stephen, because they have some healing potions and some med kits, so they manage to revive him, getting up to, I think it's just 2 hit points. And they find the book they are looking for. Next to it is a ring and a necklace. The necklace is boring, but the ring radiates magic, so they detect magic on it and realise it is magic. They then cast Identify, I think the spell is the standard Identify, and it is a, luckily they didn't just put this ring on, because it is a ring of weakness. And that is where we left the adventure. We left them going back to the Hutaakan village. When they got back with the book in question, it's night time. They're going to have a few days rest, to have a long rest effectively, and regain their maximum hit points, regain spell slots, ready for the next session. And it will probably be the last session of this adventure. Really enjoyed this one. I'm probably going to do a review of Night's Dark Terror after the next session, which will be in a couple of weeks' time, due to this weekend. As when this video goes out, we are all busy, so can't do a session. But hopefully the final of this adventure will be as thrilling as the whole game has been. Thank you for listening to this waffle, and until the next session, stay safe, take care.